Welcome back, everybody. I got something I think you're really going to enjoy. Dean Odell here, the guy on the right, he is a flat earth preacher. I got some news though, and I'll be really quick about it. Merch store is back up. You'll see it in the link for the description of this video and all future videos. I have Spankies now once again, but there's t-shirts, there's artwork, there's other stuff for you to check out. I have a P.O. box, so that'll be right down here. If you want to send me something, go ahead. If you want me to feature whatever you send in a video, then just include a note, with enough detail that I would know kind of what to say about it, I suppose. And today I greenlit the production of my second book, Facts That Aren't True, Popular Myths, Misconceptions, Old Wives' Tales, and Rumors. So that should be coming out in around 2 or 3 weeks. I'll obviously give an update on where to buy it and exactly when it comes out, so stay tuned. In one of my recent Flat Earth videos, I said, a young Earth creationist and a young Earth creationist who is a Flat Earther should debate. That would be fantastic. It's happened before. Greg Locke is the guy on the left, and Dean Odell is the guy on the right. Dean's the Flat Earther, as I said. I haven't watched too much of this, but from what I've seen, it's pretty disturbing. Fans of Dean seem to be who is in the audience. I don't know where this took place, if it's Dean's ministry, his church, or whatever. But the way the Christian fundamentalists that are in this crowd listening to this roar with applause for these idiotic flat earth talking points is really disturbing. But that's because fundamentalist Christianity has a fundamental problem. See, they're not really applauding for the flat earth, they're applauding the Bible. People ask me if they think that flat earth is becoming a bigger problem, what's going to happen in the future. I've basically been optimistic about it, but I will say, if flat earth ever starts to become like a really serious issue, it's going to be because of the churches. Because what they do is they couch flat earth as God's inerrant, perfect word. And people are pre-programmed by their religious upbringing and through, I wouldn't even call it intentional, but the sort of brainwashing that occurs by going to church and singing and moving in unison and having it beat into you that this is the ultimate source of truth. And so you're going to believe something despite what all of the other evidence is. I do think that flat earth is dumber than young earth creationism, but it's only slightly less dumb. Really. Because again, young earth creationists, the way they the data that says otherwise is really just the same thing as the way flat earthers the evidence. Now, pictures of Earth from space are more clear and obvious, I think, than radiometric data, than pictures of galaxies not hundreds of billions, millions of light years away, billions of light years away. But if you can dismiss one, I don't really see the problem with dismissing the other. The nice thing is, in the future, I guess, maybe space tourism will become a thing. And then people, maybe not directly through them, but, through a camera or a surrogate person that they trust, will be able to go out. You can actually see that the Earth isn't flat. You can, even if you look through a telescope, you can't really know intuitively that you're seeing millions or billions of light years. I'll admit that. Like two people arguing who would win in a fight, the Incredible Hulk or Superman. Let's watch two people who are wrong about everything argue about who's right.
And so a friend of mine that had gotten saved out in Hollywood, this guy worked with all the big folks in Hollywood, he got saved, and I was kind of mentoring and discipling him from a distance. And one day he just sent me this question. He said, does firmament Earth ring a bell? Now, he's already a little strange being in Hollywood, but I was like, what is he talking about? I don't even know. So he sent me this video. And it said nothing about flat Earth or biblical cosmology. It said nothing about it in the beginning, but I just started watching it. And the first part of it was a lot about NASA's fakery, where they've been caught faking stuff with the ISS and all kind of stuff, and the moon landings and all that. And I already didn't believe in the moon landing. So he sent me this.
Interesting.
And I'm like, what is he talking about? But as it got about halfway through it, the Holy Spirit just came all over me. I knew.
Pause.
I said, you know what? They've lied about everything. Not just some things, but everything.
And there you go. If your take is that the only real source of truth is God, and the words of the Bible are, vague enough to be interpreted in all kinds of ways, we know that because of how many denominations of Christianity there are, for example, then your interpretation of it, without you even realizing that you're doing a negotiation, that you're doing an interpretation, supersedes all other forms of truth. This is the fundamental problem with fundamentalism, because it leads to two fundamentalists not being able to agree that they live in the same reality. It's not just a problem with them and us secularists. In my first book, Rational Answers to Stupid Questions, in the Flat Earth section, one of the stupid things, it wasn't a question, was the Bible says the earth is flat. And I defended that that's not the case. Now, funny enough, Dan McClellan has put out 2 videos where he pretty explicitly states that, no, the people that wrote Genesis thought of the earth as being flat. They literally did think it was a dome made of polished metal. It doesn't exist anymore. So, the people that told the story and then wrote the story never saw it, but they believed that that was what happened. Or if they didn't believe it, the people that read the story interpreted it that way. There's Sheol above, there's the flat earth, was literally a dome over it separating the chaotic waters above. There's this other verse where it says something about sitting above the circle of the earth. Now, some people argue that what that word actually means is ball. It's not. The word does not mean that. It literally does mean circle. And the particular word, I don't have the Hebrew memorized, sorry, but I do know that the exact word that is used in that verse only happens a couple of times. I think you can count on one hand the number of times it occurs in all of the Bible. And the other times it refers to a circle. In one verse specifically, it talks about a circle being drawn on the ground. I am not going to change my tune and go around saying that, you're not really a Christian if you don't uphold to biblical cosmology and believe that the earth is flat or anything like that. That's too dishonest for me. But I am willing to accept that people that lived, 4,000 or 5,000 years ago that were just passing along stories did think that.
And I began to see, the high altitude balloon footage, and there is no curve, and the long distance photography, and there is no curve, and we've done experiments ourselves with. And so I began to see.
I don't know who his crew is, but I mean, they made the documentary and they disproved it. I think Greg brings that up later.
Things, and I was like, wow. And then I pulled the Bible out again and went back and go, I began to realize I have believed what men had to say about God's creation instead of what the Bible just plainly said. And
see what I mean about the thunderous applause for the absolute nonsense?
And I realized, even
because again, it's basically a virtue signal. They're not applauding for in the name of science or empirical evidence. They're just applauding in the name of their dogmatism.
Even in my younger days, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I would read Joshua 10, where Joshua told the earth, he's standing on the earth and he tells the sun and the moon to stop moving. And I would always say, wait a minute, Lord, how does this happen?
Yeah, the Bible really clearly is a geocentric book. And you could believe the earth is a globe or flat. It wouldn't really matter. But yeah, that story about the sun halting in the sky for a day is that's not compatible with an earth that moves. And it says that the earth doesn't move.
Because he didn't tell the earth to stop spinning. So that always troubled me. I could never reconcile that in my mind with what I had been taught from a child. And once God opened my eyes to this, and then I began to see the evidence, and which I'm going to share a lot of that. I began to see the evidence. I pulled my Bible out, and I pulled out my Strong's and my Greek and Hebrew dictionaries and lexicons and started going back to it all. And I had to admit that I hadn't just taken God's word literally in those areas of how he described he created the earth. And that it was still and at rest, that it was motionless, that it was stable, that it was not flying through this vast universe. That he didn't teach any of that. And so,
yeah, not to belabor this point too hard, but there is nothing in the Bible that you can point to defend the earth being a sphere. or anything like that. Because, I mean, the four corners thing is not a defense one way or the other. It just sounds like metaphorical speak. But even in the New Testament, Satan takes Jesus up to a mountain or a tree or whatever to see all the kingdoms of the earth. Well, you can't see all the kingdoms of the earth unless the earth is flat from a high vantage point. And now you can reinterpret that to mean all the kingdoms of the known earth, as the people who wrote it at that time would have understood. But again, that even that interpretation is not positive evidence in favor of the Bible endorsing that the earth is a globe. It isn't.
It took me about a month. I couldn't sleep much because I just kept studying and studying and studying. And then finally, the Lord had me share it to our church. And I turned off everything. I turned off our public broadcast and said, I'm just going to share it to our church and see how they respond. And it's been amazing. And then that was 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. And man, it's been quite the ride since then. I mean, it's exploded. And here we are.
Yeah.
But that's my side of it.
A lot of our folks, and even a lot of people watching, maybe aren't as into this and understand the reality of it. And that's one of the reasons I think it's good that two pastors are discussing and debating this from a biblical creationist standpoint. But what I find, and some of this no doubt is perception, because this is so new to me, and you have to understand, I'm going to be a little bit guarded in the way that I discuss things tonight, because I can be very bombastic, right? And I don't want to seem abrasive. I don't want to come off as a jerk for Jesus. But here's...
Dean Odell, there's video footage of him explicitly saying that if they see a 24-hour sun in Antarctica, then the flat earth is dead. So we got to get an update from Dean Odell on that. Get on it, folks.
Here's one of the things that bothers me from the beginning. And I just want to ask you a couple of questions, because you're really the one that we brought here to explain maybe what we don't understand, what we're trying to figure out, right? And so there's no need for me to ask myself these questions. And so the first one is, I have a hard time with the people that see factual things. And I'm not talking about curves and all that. I'm not talking about looking out the window of an airplane and all of that, right? We could argue that till the cows come home. But I watched this show, this Behind the Curve, right?
Oh, good. Okay,
and there
good.
were 3 times in that documentary where the evidence proved rotation and curvature. And in each occasion, the flat earth individual said, it's not going the direction that we want it to go. And then, of course, they ended the whole show with, well, that's interesting, right? And so my question is, why is it that when we do come up with an argument, it seems like it doesn't matter what we say, you're just not going to believe it? Does that make sense? How can you just reject the evidence?
That's actually a really good question, and it's so ironic coming from a young Earth creationist.
Yeah. Understood.
Because we show evidence, and then everybody, people go, well, I don't care. Here's the thing about whether it be the gyroscope that
Flat Earthers don't show evidence. They do things like, well, this one guy took this picture on this lake, and the view is only a couple miles. Therefore, Earth, like they don't have anything that like scales up to an appropriate demonstration that the globe model is false. They don't try. They actually never try to falsify the globe model. I mean, not really. They try to confirm the flat Earth model, but they do it, like I was saying, mostly on scales that are completely inappropriate. Because the curvature of the Earth is completely negligible over, even a distance of several miles.
Electronic gyroscope, and I remember that. Now, you got to look at things like, just because somebody does an experiment, that experiment has to be repeated again and again and again and observed again and again before you realize it. But see, Michelson Morley, the 2 scientists in the days of Einstein, did an experiment, the famous one, where they proved that the Earth was not moving through the ether.
Yes. Okay. I don't get how flat earthers keep getting this. The Michelson-Morley experiment demonstrated that Earth does not move through a luminiferous ether. It established that there is no luminiferous ether. That's how people thought. People thought that light could only propagate through the universe if there was a medium for it to propagate through. That turns out not to be the case. Again, the experiment didn't detect movement through an ether because they had a working model of how that would work, and they had a predictive model of how that would work, and it came up with nothing. Now, Earth's movement through space, I'm not aware of a way you could demonstrate that. But again, the ring laser gyroscope thing or the pendulums, those demonstrate the rotation of the Earth. And other things like the Coriolis effect, that's not an observation of the rotation of the Earth, but it's consistent with the other things, and it explains exactly why the Coriolis effect is what it is. Same thing with ocean currents, the direction that they move clockwise versus counterclockwise in the different hemispheres is completely consistent with a rotating globe Earth. And the flat Earth model can't explain any of that. Another thing I wish people would do more often is talk about seismic data, because when a station gets the seismic waves, they don't know what direction it came from. They just know how far away the epicenter is. So they draw the circle, and then those three circles converge in one point. Well, that also only works. That's only mappable on a globe. It's completely you could try it on a flat Earth globe, on a flat Earth map, but it'll never work because the distances. Yes, there's distortions on globe maps as well, but again, that's why you can use a 3D globe model, and then you can actually plot it. You can't do that on a flat Earth because the distances are so distorted, especially in the southern hemisphere. So those 3 points wouldn't ever converge on the actual epicenter.
The ether was an accepted concept back then, and really more and more physicists are coming to accept the ether. Now, what the ether is...
Phlogiston was an accepted concept insofar as it was an argument from ignorance, and then it was eventually debunked.
It's an unseen, you can see it sometimes if you zoom in on the moon, but it's actually a dense type, superfluid type gas. It gets more dense as you go up, and I've talked about it a lot, but here's what they discovered. When Michaels and Morley did their experiment, they did find 1/6 movement, okay? Because the ether is moving. The ether is what we believe the sun and the moon are moving in a circuit, as the Bible says in Psalm 19, that the sun and the moon's moving in a circuit over us, and that they're at a certain altitude, and that literally that ether current is what's pushing it around. I found government documents that actually...
I have no idea what he's talking about. If anybody knows, please provide context.
That they believe in the ether current, and they believe in the ether. So the ether is moving. So certain instruments, like when Michaels and Morley did their test to see if the Earth was moving, and the gyroscope, sometimes they're going to pick up the movement of the ether, and not necessarily doesn't mean that the Earth is spinning. Now, like one of the big arguments of the global side, the spinning ball side, is the Foucault pendulum. But what we have discovered is that in Smithsonian, I actually have the documents. The Smithsonian admits that they use an electromagnet to move it. And my friend Matt Long is here, who used to... Where are you, Matt? There he is back there.
Yeah, perhaps to keep it from just coming at rest, but they don't change the angular momentum of it.
Matt Long used to work for a construction company that actually installed one of those electromagnets on the pendulum. So they try to tell us in the media, through the media and the agenda, is that the Earth's spinning is what's moving the pendulum. But you have tour guides that will admit, when the Foucault pendulum, they'll admit that they have a motor on it, an electromagnet motor, that if it was left alone, it'd stand still, but they keep it moving. So what I'm saying is that...
Yes, keep it moving, but they don't change its direction.
There's a lot of stuff that's put out for evidence, but once you really look at it, and you could even find them admitting it, that it's kind of gets debunked real quick. But there's a movement in the ether for sure. But let me just say this too. I spent hours. I am the one that put out the government documents, because I spent one day, I sat down with a cup of coffee, and at like 9 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't get up until 5 that afternoon, digging through the Freedom of Information Act room where there's declassified documents there. I found Russian and United States military, CIA, you name it, documents that admit that we live on a non-rotating flat Earth. And I could give you literally...
They start applauding.
Dozens and dozens of those.
Oh, so in this case, they're not applauding the Bible. They're just, applauding the anti-deep state sentiment. That's another very, very much right-wing fundamentalist, evangelical, Christian, Republican thing for whatever reason.
That we live on a non-rotating flat Earth. And I could give you literally dozens and dozens and dozens of those documents.
So one of the problems with dealing with flat earthers is they have so many examples of random shit nobody's ever heard of. The only thing like this that I'm aware of is they say, oh, the 1980 something NASA or aviation training manual says something like assume a flat, non-rotating, whatever. And it's for some sort of like computer simulation thing. It's like, yeah, computers back then had the calculating power of like a thumb drive does today. So that's not, but I've also been told that in other places in those manuals, it states exactly the opposite. So I don't know. If it weren't for cherry picking, they'd have nothing at all.
Our government admits it, but they kept it secret from us. So what I'm saying is there's a lot of evidence. And the original science, in fact, Einstein created his famous theory of relativity because once that Michelson Morley proved by scientific, they admitted that their experiment proved that the Earth was not moving, but they could not accept that because they were hardcore Copernicans, and they just didn't accept it. And so he came up with the E equals MC squared theory, right? But Tesla said his theory was just a bunch of hogwash, and he was a fuzzy-headed idiot. And Tesla was the one that was the real inventor and true scientist. So,
inventor, engineer, although I don't know how many things Tesla invented, sure, but no, Einstein was the true scientist, and the most brilliant scientist of the last several hundred years, and it's not even remotely close. This idea that Einstein came up with E equals MC squared to try to rescue the heliocentric model from the Michelson-Morley experiment, I mean, this guy's a moron, an actual moron.
So what I'm saying is that it works both ways, you know. But I will say this: people that are on our side, my side about this issue, the other side, you have to remember this about us. We believed everything you believed before, you know, because that's what we were taught. You know, we didn't have a choice. I mean, from childhood on up, it's ingrained in your head that we're spinning and flying through an ever-expanding universe. But here's the reason why you know that's not true. We can observe it, but see, remember, brainwashing stops you from being able to think and even accept what you observe.
This is the most ironic thing I've ever heard in my life.
Now, they tell us we're going around the Earth 66,000 miles an hour, 67. I mean, it changes all the time. And they say we're going
Yeah, because it's an elliptical orbit, so
around the sun. Then they say that we're moving 500,000 miles an hour through our solar system. And then it says that
big
our
number scary
solar system
mantra
is moving through the ever-expanding galaxies at 500,000 miles an hour. Now, we do that. They say we're doing that we've been doing that for thousands of years.
And yet the stars don't change.
And yet, Polaris, the North Star, never moves.
Yes, it does. It's extremely slight how much it's moved, like in the last, for example, 100 years. But it has moved. And, you know, the pyramids that these guys love to point out, the pyramids have these shafts in them that you can look through, and they point to, I don't know if you can actually see through them, but they go through, but they don't they don't point to anything in particular. But when the pyramids were being built, they did point to the North Star, which wasn't Polaris at the time. It was a star called Thuban. So by appealing to this other source that they claim proves something else about what they believe in, you can demonstrate that actually, according to your source, the North Star does change.
When somebody does time-lapse, focuses on the North Star, and does time-lapse photography, the circles that the star make, the star trails, are perfectly circular. And every night I can walk out of my house and point in a direction, and Orion's belt will come up in the same place every night.
No, it doesn't. It comes up in a different place every single night. In fact, for several months out of the year, you can't even see the Orion constellation.
Now, if we're flying, spiraling, spinning through an ever-expanding universe,
the galaxy is also rotating. So the stars don't really change their position relative to us because their position relative to us really isn't changing. Now, it actually is, but over extremely, extremely minute scales from what we're able to observe.
Then the stars we see should have changed. But we can look back at the ancient Egyptians, and they were looking at the same stars and navigating the same way we do today.
Nope, they had a different North Star. It was Thuban.
So just by what we observe and see, we are not a spinning ball in outer space and then flying through an endless space. That's just...
You can't observe the celestial to prove the terrestrial. There.
Nonsense.
But let me ask you a question, and we're going to get to a lot of that more in detail when we both do our debate discussions. One of the things I have a hard time with is, you know, look, I get the government lies. One of the hard things about the flat earth idea, what I would call a flat earth theory, is there's a lot of conspiracy theories that are true that I believe in, right? There's no doubt about that. And so it's almost like an us and them. You guys are the few enlightened people of reality, whereas I would say, well, of course I know the election was stolen. Of course I know that vaccines...
Jeez.
nonsense. Of course, I didn't close my church. We even put up a sign that said we're a mask-free campus. We won't even allow you to wear a mask here. And so it's not like we're into all of the stuff, right?
Go figure.
And so it seems like with this, us versus them football mentality that we're tackling each other over some of the same issues because, yeah, there's a lot of things that you and I agree on. But then it's like you got to keep going deeper in the conspiracies and keep going deeper. And now you can agree with me on all these things, but if you don't agree about the flat earth theory, the flat earth model and concept, well, then you don't really understand the Bible. I'm not saying you can't be saved. I don't believe you would believe that either. You don't really understand the word. You're not really enlightened like the rest of us. But then we know, government, NASA lies. But here's the problem that I have. And probably in your presentation, you'll talk about some of those documents. I've read every one of those documents that you released.
Oh, yeah. This is a 4-hour video. And Odell, I don't know when it starts at the 1 hour mark. He does like a 3-hour sermon. Well, okay, Greg gets his start. I am not watching this whole video. So, yeah, I'm just throwing that out there.
No, not yet. I haven't released some of them.
Well, the ones that you have released publicly. I read all of them, said I wanted to be very thorough. But here's the issue. NASA bad, NASA bad, NASA bad. But these NASA documents that I just released tell you that NASA's telling the truth. So I don't understand.
That is, he's doing actually a pretty decent job because that's something I've a hypocrisy sort of, or an inconsistency that I've noticed with them a lot. Is they claim that they're liars, but they claim that they admit the truth publicly.
Discrepancy. And I'm just being honest about that.
Well, it's simple. When these documents were top secret, meaning if you divulged the information that was in them before they were released through the Freedom of Information Act, you went to prison accused of treason. Okay, so the government will hide things like, okay, the MK Ultra program. We'll use that example. The MK Ultra program was denied by our government for decades and decades.
I mean, if you release classified information, sure, and there's an argument as to whether or not it's justified, but it's not an argument as to whether or not the classified information is true or false.
For decades. Operation Paperclip, after World War II, they brought all the Nazi scientists over here, gave them immunity, and they basically started the mind control program through it's called MK Ultra, it's called Operation Artichoke, Mockingbird, right? So all of this was...
I'm not aware of Paperclip and MK Ultra having any kind of link. Again, if anybody knows, comment.
Done.
So he's just been doing conspiracy bingo for a long time. I'm going to cut it all out. It's not interesting. The problem is that conspiracies have happened. It is not the greatest supporting evidence for the positive claim that this other specific conspiracy is true. It's not evidence, but it's really not great. If the only thing you knew about somebody was that they had told 100 lies before, and then you conclude, therefore, everything they say is a lie, that's really fallacious, because the data you have doesn't actually capture the entire scope of what this person has ever said.
And I just said everything done in secret and spoken in secret is going to be shouted from the rooftops. And I actually believe it's a rule that God has made them start revealing things to us. And they actually do. And then the Freedom of Information Act, I'm going to tell you this, I believe the Freedom of Information Act is Jesus made them do, because Jesus said everything done in secret and spoken in secret is going to be shouted from the rooftops.
FOIA is Jesus? Because, oh man. The way they see, like I said earlier, scripture is vague enough that it can be interpreted to mean literally anything. FOIA is Jesus.
And I actually believe it's a rule that God has made them start revealing things to us. And so that's easy to determine. Dean. I look at a document that's top secret, and it was kept top secret from us.
Here's what Greg's not doing that's really unfortunate, and he's trying to be cordial and polite and say we're on the same team. Here's what Greg's not doing is, could you back that up? Or just saying source? Yeah.
For years and years and years and decades, and finally now it's released. Oh, I see why they were hiding it.
Gotcha. All right. I know you're going to talk a little bit about those documents, and so let me just kind of move on to another question, because I'm really anxious to get you hooked up and let you start doing your actual presentation and make sure the guys have the cord and the computer and all of that ready. Okay, the age-old question is, why don't you guys still have an actual map? Why do you have a model but not a scaled map?
Nobody does. You know that all of our maps are wrong.
No. Okay, well, the maps are inaccurate, but the globes are not inaccurate. Like, for example, if you move south on a flat Earth, once you get past to the equator, you still, if you have two people going south, once they go past the equator, they keep getting farther apart. On a map, they get closer together. Now, different kinds of map, like a Mercator projection, as you go north-south, you never appear to be getting closer together. On a Robinson projection, you do get closer together in the southern hemisphere. Or just using a globe model, you get closer together. So we don't have, you can't pin a globe on a wall, but you can use a globe, and it is accurate, and it does reflect reality.
Every single one of them.
Well, we have a scale, and you can tell me that this is 200 miles apart from certain towns, and I can look at the scale on a regular map, and I can drive it. It's exactly 200 miles
The
apart.
Gleason map works really well. And
No, it absolutely doesn't. For the biggest problem is for what I said before, but also like the direction of where the sun is, like during a sunset
yeah,
in the southern hemisphere.
and you have to know how to use maps. Maps have different scales and different
Well, I think in the northern hemisphere too, but
things that you look at. But bottom line is that all maps are wrong. The projection map, one of the Mercator maps show Iceland like bigger than Africa, and that's not true.
Greenland, but no, yeah, he's right. But a Robinson projection is better. Or you can literally just look at a globe. On a globe, Greenland is the right size. Even on a flat Earth map, because the distortions are low above the North Pole on a flat Earth map. But on a flat Earth map, the size of Greenland it's pretty decent, but the size of Africa is absolutely horrible because the equator is really far away from the North Pole. So that doesn't match reality.
So what I'm saying is nobody has a true, accurate to the perfect map. That's just
But our globes are.
a fact. Not your side, not my side. We're still working on it.
But we can travel based off our model and based off our map and get exactly where we want to get. But you can't do that on the model of the flat Earth.
No, it's not true.
And even Africa is like 3,000 miles wider than it's supposed to be because it's looking down on a spherical Earth and it's just been flattened out.
It's absolutely not true.
That is 100% true.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. In fact, what navigation.
So Greg never nuh-unned Dean, but Dean's just nuh-uhing Greg here. That's pretty obnoxious.
And I have this in my book. Navigation is called the Great Circle navigation, not
Yes.
the Great Sphere navigation. All right, so everything.
Yeah, but every pilot would tell you that's an actual commercial airline pilot.
Where's my Army pilot? Where's my Army pilot?
Yeah.
Stand up, Army pilot.
The dude's probably a liar.
Okay, see,
There he is. So what I'm saying is not every pilot will tell you that. I have a friend, good dear friend.
Commercial airline pilots will tell you that.
A commercial pilot will tell you. I
Yes.
have multiple. In fact,
because I don't want to get on a plane of a guy that doesn't know about the rotation of the Earth because I'll end up in the wrong place. That's the entire idea of flight.
this is what's okay. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. All right, if you believe the
I think Dean's getting his feelings hurt.
Earth is spinning, and if you believe in the Coriolis effect,
Oh,
that you
no.
have to.
I definitely believe in the Coriolis effect.
It's not even in the SEAL manual, and I have a SEAL friend. So what I'm going to tell you right now is that if that was happening, you could not land a plane on a north-south runway because if the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour and an airplane is flying at 500 miles an hour and you have to count in velocity and you have to figure all that in, they could not land on a north-south runway.
Yes, they could, because the plane has engines and it can change its trajectory. And that 1,000-mile-per-hour east-west momentum or whatever is simply conserved. It exists in the ground and the plane, so all things are equal. That's like, you can, Action Lab has a great video about this. You can run backwards off of a moving trailer and then land on the ground and just, you land on the ground as if all you did was jump 6 inches in the air. You just, boop, plop back down on the ground. It's totally possible.
Impossible. Gyroscopes in planes tell the pilot that they're flying flat and level, and many pilots have come out. An F-16 pilot's come out and a whistleblower and said it's flat, he knows it. Here's another thing. You see an F-16, I've been down in Pensacola where you see the Blue Angels do their thing. They will fly 50 feet off of the water, breaking the sound barrier, okay? Now that means that they are moving over 700 miles an hour, right? They break the sound barrier. Sometimes they're flying at Mach 2.
Oh,
in a straight
no.
line.
Is he really going to say that they don't dip the nose down to account for the curvature of the Earth? Is he really going to do that?
Now, if they're flying that fast and the Earth's curving, and most people don't on
Yep, sounds
your side
like
do
it.
not know how much the Earth curves. They don't even know the formula. But it's 8 inches per mile squared.
No, it's
Now, if you do
not.
that, going that
That's a parabola. That works for a few miles, but for crying out
fast,
loud.
you're going to have to be nosing the plane down. In fact, if you're going 500 miles an hour, you're going to be nosing the plane down like 2,000 feet, which is over half a mile, every few minutes. right? If you're flying at Mach 2, it's incredible. They would have to be nosing the plane down continually, and pilots will tell you that they never nose their plane down to follow the curvature of the Earth. That is a...
Okay, I actually did the math for this in my book. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, so let's go get them. There's more to this, like the fact that as the airplane is flying, it's actually constantly falling, so it has to exert lift to maintain its elevation. So literally, a plane actually doesn't have to adjust for the curvature of the Earth because that's what flying is. It just in practice, that's what's going on. But here's the math. For every 10 kilometers of distance, the Earth actually curves 7.85 meters. Commercial airplanes travel around 950 kilometers per hour. So at that rate, it takes 38 seconds to traverse those 10 kilometers. This works to an average loss of 1 meter of altitude every 4.84 seconds for the plane to maintain a steady altitude. This might sound like something you would notice, but remember that the forces are balanced. The plane is always falling, but it's generating lift at the same time. So you wouldn't be able to detect any changes in altitude because your altitude isn't actually changing. But we can pretend that the forces aren't balanced, and this still dismantles the claim. At a rate of 7.85 meters of curvature every 10 kilometers, the plane would only need to angle its nose downward at 0.045 degrees to maintain the same altitude after 10 kilometers. So this is like imagining that as it goes around the Earth, what it's actually doing is taking straight lines to vertices on a polygon with like an insane number of sides to it. So yeah, they can say the big scary numbers like, oh, you'd have to go down so many feet or whatever. And I'm not gonna do him the service of checking his math because I'm sure it's bullshit. But yeah, when you actually do the real math, you find out that that angle is absolutely microscopic. I'm so glad I wrote this book.
The fact.
They don't have to have their nose down to follow the curvature of the Earth. They fly at altitude, and altitude takes care of the curvature of the Earth. That's the entire point of a pilot. That's how he keeps the plane in the air.
See, again, Greg's doing an awesome job with this. Now, he didn't really explain it very well, but that's the answer.
To say that you got to nose down and go around the Earth
would be ridiculous. Let me explain something about aerodynamics. Aerodynamics will tell you right now, you cannot fly a plane at Mach 2. You cannot fly a plane in any curve. I don't care if it's this way, or this way. They do not fly. They will come apart. That's why the SR-71, there was one time it just came to pieces. It had to fly straight and level, or it would just burn up and tear apart. So,
no, that's absolutely not true. I mean, it had to, because of how fast it's going through the air, which it doesn't matter if Earth is flat, or if Earth is a sphere but doesn't rotate, or is a rotating sphere. It doesn't matter because that's just a matter of the, I don't know what you would call it, the drag, putting mechanical stress on the wings. So, like, I don't know if you guys have seen that video, but that guy takes his RC plane out. It's a really fast RC plane, and it's a really big one. And as it goes through the air, the wings kind of flutter like a dragonfly. They're not supposed to do that. And it must have hit like its resonant frequency because the plane just completely falls apart. So, yeah, this has nothing to do with whether or not the Earth is spinning or anything.
No, I'm sorry. They don't nose a plane down.
So you've never seen a plane curve? You've never seen a plane do flips, go up, go down, barrel roll?
No, what you're talking about is you're going somewhere else with this. That's different. When I'm talking about a plane flying at Mach 1, Mach 2, Mach 3, they're not nosing the plane down.
But I don't travel to...
Yeah, but again, the angle is less than 1/2 of 1/10 of 1 degree.
Go preach at Mach 1, Mach 2. I'm talking about real people understanding the science behind this, not just speculations of being able to say, well, a lot of pilots have come out. Well, I would like to see one of them. Because
they're here. They got one here.
They're not. They're not here. He just said he wasn't a military pilot. Listen, these are the people.
I got it there.
Hold on.
The white shirt guy.
Commercial airline pilot.
Army pilot.
Commercial airline pilot.
What difference does it make?
Because the people that want to talk are helicopter pilots.
Okay, well, I thought he had him there, but it turns out he didn't.
Are the only flat earthers I've ever met. I've only met 3 of them, which is fine. And then people that fly small planes for small distances. Because if you're going to get in an airplane, and I know you guys hate the southern hemisphere and all that kind of stuff, I'm telling you, there is no possible way to make it from point A to point B without curvature and rotation of the Earth. It's an impossibility. Now, I know your side does not believe in that, but to say that you guys have professional surveyors that survey, I'm not talking about little bitty areas or pilots.
Okay, let me bring this up. Since you bring up surveyors, U.S. Geological Survey
Yep.
is very clear that they don't even count curvature over 100 square miles. Well, you know what? That's about foolish because
100 square miles. That's a what? So like 10 by 10 miles? I don't know. Maybe they don't if they're only going out 10 by 10 miles, but there's a guy on TikTok. He's what was his name? Baron Rutledge? I think maybe that's the guy. Is that the guy? Is that the land surveyor guy? I don't remember. There's a land surveyor on TikTok. He's very active and he debates flat earthers all the time. And he talks in detail about how, no, we do account for curvature. Maybe not all the time, but it is part of our job.
either they don't know. They count it as flat over 100 square miles. They count the Earth as flat. Do you know how much curvature is at 100 miles supposed to be there?
Well, we have a surveyor in the room.
We said 100 square miles. So over 100 linear miles, there would be a lot, but over 100 square miles, which would be 10 by 10, I don't know why he's saying it that way, it would be much less.
Oh, no. I'm asking you. Do you know how much curvature of the Earth is supposed to be there?
He's not a land surveyor, so ask a land surveyor. So, yeah, not a good look there, Dean.
In 100 miles.
Well, if you use the parabolic approximation, which is the zetetic astronomy, which is nonsense because that's a curve as an arch. It would look like the world would look like the St. Louis Arch.
No, that is not it. Every scientist.
Yes, it is it.
I have a PhD in physics here with me that's highly sought after across the world by Google and NIH.
No, you don't.
And everything else. She will tell you that if you're going to have a ball that's 24,901 miles in circumference, and it's a perfect sphere, right? You have a sphere, and that's what NASA shows us is a perfect sphere. Though Neil deGrasse Tyson says it's a pear-shaped thing, right? But here we go. Here we go. If you have a sphere,
It's not a perfect sphere, but I get it. Go ahead.
well, that's the pictures they give us, so somebody's wrong. But here,
It's 43 kilometers wider than it is tall, which at those scales is very nearly a
here's
perfect
the
sphere.
thing: if it's curving, if it's a sphere, 24,901 miles, the math does not lie. It is 8 inches per mile squared at the equator.
It's a parabolic curve.
And actually, if you go up the ball, going east and west, it actually increases to 9 and.
See, normally flat earthers, although they're complete bullshit artists, they at least have the rebuttals that people are going to give in their back pocket. So then they could be like, ah, I knew you would say that. Now here's my next response. But Greg doesn't even have that. He's not even a good flat earther, which,
Ordered 9.5. It actually, the curve gets worse. So no, these are things we can calculate, and they're not arguing. I have engineers and PhDs in physics who will explain to you the math if you need it explained to you. But I don't know where you're coming from with that crazy stuff. The Earth, if it is the ball,
It comes right out of the zetetic astronomy book from Samuel Robotham.
no, it doesn't. I've never even read his book.
Okay.
no, it doesn't. I haven't read that book. Like, I have a book and it says XYZ. No, it doesn't. I've never read that book.
No, this math is very.
He's really floundering. Yeah, okay, this Dean guy is very insecure. He needs to get on Modern Day Debate. That would be funny.
Very clear.
And debate a land surveyor. Should get a land surveyor and a pilot to debate him. That would be the funniest shit ever.
It's as clear as it gets. Where's my PhD in physics? Please stand.
No, she doesn't.
The square
I'm going to just ask you to raise your hand.
is an approximation.
Does the Earth, if it's a sphere curving at 24,901 miles in circumference, is that an average of 8 inches per mile squared? Yes.
Right. But the square is
No, it's not.
an approximation,
Over short distances, yes. So she's lying.
yes or no?
No.
Absolutely
And
it
it's actually 7.9 inches. It's accurate. It's very accurate. So, like I said, that's a PhD in physics. Now, if you want to go, she does experiments at Tuskegee University.
Just get a
in Alabama,
graphing calculator and
like I
plug
said,
it
she
in,
knows what she's
and
talking
you'll
about.
see.
So that's why I brought these people, because we're not going to go down these crazy roads. I mean, math is math.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the math is not in your favor. And so, I mean, yeah, anybody could bring testimonies, anybody can bring doctors, PhDs, that's fine. But the squared is an approximation. It's a parabolic approximation for an arch. That's 100% the facts.
Nope.
That's 100% true.
No.
Like plug in any function into a graphing calculator where it's like x squared or whatever, and yeah, it's a parabola.
It's not.
It is.
It is not. If you draw a circle, you can figure out how much it's curving.
That's not the formula you use.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, parabolic approximation, it is an approximation, but the question still has to be answered. regardless of how off our maps are, which we can navigate very well with them, why is there no real map for the model of the flat Earth?
Why is there no curvature when we go out with high zoom cameras?
That's not what I...
Not answering the question. Yeah, so the question was...
asked.
No, I can ask whatever I want to ask. Look.
But you can't answer anything.
I don't agree with you about that.
I know. I just want an answer to the question. Is there an actual map that can be produced?
Very good.
Like we have a map. We don't have a model. We have a map, and an entire model that can be made predictions off of.
I've already answered the question.
There are no predictions
No, you didn't.
I'm not answering again.
that can be made from a flat Earth model.
All the maps are wrong. All the maps are wrong.
All the maps are wrong.
All the maps are wrong, and they know it.
So
They're
then why
projections.
isn't your map wrong when you say Antarctica encircles the entire disk and the North Pole is right in the middle? Why isn't your map wrong, but our map is wrong, but the model proves that all the predictions for our map are 1,000% correct?
I wouldn't have thrown in the last thing. I would have said, well, then why is your map... Like that's very good. It's really hard to get them on their own words like that.
They're not. The earliest, listen, you got to understand that there are people, that's why they don't.
I do understand. That's why I'm asking you the question.
You interrupted me. I tell you what, I'm not going to do this interruption thing, all right? I'm not. So we can just go to a presentation if we're going to do this. I'm not doing it.
I just want you to answer the question.
No, I'm not doing it.
Why not?
I'm not going to
Wow, what a baby.
just interrupt because I start giving an answer, you interrupt me.
No,
I'm
answer the
not doing
question.
it. I'm not doing it.
I'll give you 30 seconds of silence. Why do you not have a map or a model that can make predictions?
Why? We do. And I'm going to tell you, it's been very accurate. The astrolabe is another instrument that's proved this. It's based on a flat, non-rotating Earth. The astrolabe, that's how they navigated seas long before we got to this nonsense, okay, about their spinning ball thing. It's always been based on, even the compass itself is based on a flat...
The compass? No, it's not.
Circular Earth. It doesn't work if you're down here. It's not pointing through the ball.
Because maybe you guys don't know what they're saying, but I see this argument all the time. They'll show like a person on the Earth and the compass points north. Like on the flat Earth, yeah, it points north. Like if you drew a line from where that person is to where the North Pole is, it goes over the ground and gets there. But on a globe, like if you're in the southern hemisphere, it points north, which means it's pointing through the Earth. No, it aligns with the magnetic field lines, which wrap around the Earth like that. And you can see magnetic field lines and how they do that just with some iron filings and a magnet and a sheet of paper.
So what I'm saying is that bottom line, that is not even the argument. The argument is not there. We know there's discrepancies in the maps, and the early explorers who went into the Arctic region, who used the instruments that they had based on a sphere, they would always find themselves out of reckoning, they said, sometimes extreme out of reckoning when they went there. I document all this, Captain Ross and all these others. I document captain after captain after captain who, before they had to lie and before there was NASA.
I don't know exactly what he's talking about, but I've read a lot, well, I don't know about a lot, but I've read several books at least about Arctic exploration and Antarctic exploration. And the reckoning problem is a longitude problem, not a latitude problem. And sea ice drifts, but you can't detect that drift. It can be very, very subtle, but you can drift many miles in a day. So trying to figure out exactly where they are becomes almost impossible. Longitudinally, east to west, not north to south.
That when you go into the southern part, the southern hemisphere, if that's what you want to call it, when you go there, that they are out of reckoning trying to base their navigation on a sphere. That's documented history.
Well, I mean, you can make a dead man say anything, so it's easy to talk about what used to happen back then.
That's a good line.
We have more technology now than the world's ever imagined, and it's growing every day. So why can't you do those same things now? Why do you always have to talk about these people that used to try to do this? Did you know right now there's between 1,000 and 5,000 people on the continent of Antarctica? And people are like, well, NASA's there, and there's these, gunny penguins that are keeping people from getting it. It's just, it's this fantastical nonsense where people have flown over it, taken pictures, people have all of these people have
He's going to say Admiral Byrd.
Navigated Antarctica.
Come on, that's on my bingo card. Admiral Byrd.
All right.
You can buy a cruise ticket and go to Antarctica. And here's what's interesting. In 2019, the Flat Earth folks were going to take a cruise to Antarctica to prove their thoughts. Nothing ever came of it.
Here, let me explain that to you.
You can fly there.
Never heard about that.
You can, fly there and see the coastline. That's about all you can do. A little bit of the coastline.
Absolutely not.
Oh, yes. And if you want to go there and stay, you have to have permission from a government. Have you ever seen the amount of stuff you have to fill out to go through there?
Yes.
And also, they're not going to let you go on an expedition inland just as a just as me or you. They're not going to let that happen. And here's another thing. If this would be easy to prove, but they hide this from us too. All we'd have to prove is go to Antarctica. Let me and you go to Antarctica, spend a week there in the summer.
Oh, wow.
And let's see if the sun does a 360-degree circle all the way around us. If so, it's a ball.
Huh. Wow. Yeah, so when did this happen? This was only a year ago. Well, let's get the exact date, because sometimes December 3rd, 2023. Huh. Interesting. Yep, so apparently he has a sermon. It came out on January 1st. The final experiment debunked. So there we go. Oh, wow. He was one of the guys invited. So I didn't really keep up with the final experiment stuff all that closely. Okay, I don't think I'm going to watch his sermon here. Maybe I'll do this for a different video. But somebody copy and pasted his quote from this debate here onto here. And he replied to it. His response: "There, we gotcha. You said this thing once, so now we will ignore everything else you have ever said before and will ever say after and expect you to recant and denounce your faith in God and your holy book. No, just the shape of the earth. It doesn't prove anything. It's a straw man. It's not a straw man. You said it. It's still a straw man." So I don't know who Brother Soren is. This says to me that, Dean Odell Europe. Okay, so this is a different account. Okay, so Dean is not speaking here. Okay. He's a pastor. He's in church. But this isn't church. It's like the Kent Hovind thing where he just talks about evolution and biology during his sermons or whatever. This just so isn't church. It's creepy. Okay, I skimmed through tons of this. At no point do I ever hear him talk about the actual final experiment. So I don't know.
But if the sun comes in this way and then leaves that way, then it's not. It is what we say it is. And they have webcam videos, right? At Antarctica, and there'll be a flagpole sitting there. And so if the sun's coming in this way, you should have a shadow here, and then it comes in and it should be here, and then it comes over here, and then it should just be back here.
Yeah, the shadow would go in a circle.
What they do is they never let you see 24 hours a day. They never let you. They cut the tape, they edit it, and Jaron of Jaronism actually has emails from them asking, "Why are you cutting the video?" And they give him these stupid...
Oh, well, this is irrelevant because Jaronism... So Jaron doesn't not believe the earth is flat. He just said he's leaving the flat earth cult because of how rude and toxic and crazy they've all been. So I don't know. I think that's all I need to hear from this. They go on for a little bit longer, but maybe we'll just have to make this a part 2. I got to do some research now that we've gotten to final experiment stuff, if Dean's actually changed his mind or not. I mean, considering that sermon was called the final experiment debunked, I think it's safe to say not. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.